When you think about why it is that you stack silver and gold, I mean, obviously there's a ton of different reasons that you could be doing it, right? You could be doing it to save. You could be doing it potentially as an investment or as a store of value, or even, again, as your own personal insurance policy against, a wide variety of different possibilities. But the big question is there a set limit of money that you would have where stacking really wouldn't appeal to you anymore? Not just necessarily, I mean, would you even call it stacking at, a certain level of income? Let's say, if you were a millionaire, let's say you had $2 million liquid money, not in real estate, not in, other assets. We're talking cash. Would stacking still appeal to you? Would you look at it the same way? Would you look at your money the same way that you do now? So it's an interesting topic because when you think about, stacking in general, a lot of it for stackers is, the protection aspect, the physical aspect, the added value other than just the metal. Now, of course, silver, again, is looked at as the poor man's gold, but maybe even, consider gold. Would it appeal to a multimillionaire to have, large amounts of gold bullion? The reason I ask is because when you think about people like Warren Buffett, obviously a well-known investor, very celebrated. When you think about things like that, it's interesting because, his attitude towards gold is that it's just not worth having, especially as like an investment per se. He said that many times that he doesn't believe in, physical metals as an investment. Now, I find that pretty interesting because I'm wondering personally if it's a matter of, the returns on gold and silver just don't make it a worthwhile thing to be putting your fiat into. Now, again, the stocking communities, many of you are sitting there thinking, well, why the hell would I want to have a bunch of fiat when I could have, something physical? I get it. But again, if your current situation was quite different, where, having this level of fiat, wasn't an issue, would it still interest you to have something so, basic and physical like precious metals? Would you be looking instead at real estate? Or, now I've got plenty of money. I don't have to worry about money. I don't really have to worry about saving. You would be more looking at maybe putting your money into a business or buying stocks or, other things that you could, generate a return from. And I think there's something to that. I think there's something to the idea that, the more money you have, the less appealing that something like, physical metals would be. This is the 2020, where's the date? Britannia, where's your date? 2020 Britannia. And then I've got the newer one over here somewhere. Pretty similar, but you can see the difference in the security features between them. Britannia, where'd you go? Anyway, here we go. Pretty close, pretty similar. But the 2023 is obviously much more defined. The 2020 has seen better days. It went through 2020. What do you want from it? But no, I think, when you really think it through, at a certain level of assets, and let's call fiat money, fiat currency an asset, but at a certain level, stacking may lose its appeal. It may lose a lot of the things that drew you to it because really you don't need that protection anymore. Now, the other interesting thing that I was thinking about was that perhaps at a certain level of income, or assets, you actually become more invested in the system as is. And so things like this become less relevant than they would have been, previously. So when you don't have as much money, obviously protecting that money and taking care of it becomes so much more important because you can't afford to lose, anything that you have. Whereas when money is really not that much of an issue anymore, you have your basic needs taken care of, maybe, you don't need that level of protection anymore. And maybe that's why metals, as time goes on, become less and less appealing, when you have that level of assets. And I think it's interesting. I wonder if that does happen. I don't know anybody who's on the stacking community who's gone through that transition of having, gone from, not having much to having, more than enough while being a stacker. But I think the interesting part is the part about them becoming more and more invested in the system, the more cash that they have. You know, maybe your mentality changes from being, you know, outside the system, and I want to be my own bank, and I want, you know, all these different things that we, you know, ascribe to as stackers, to no, I do want the system to continue as is, as long as possible, because I'm benefiting from it now. And, you know, you see lots of people in the community, you know, you see opinions change, and even your own stacking habits may change over time, you know, from gold to silver, or, you know, different things like that. But imagine if it wasn't so much of a transition between different types of stacking, but just your ideas about needing to stack or wanting to stack, or is it a worthwhile pursuit, completely changing, mainly because of your, you know, financial status. Interesting. It's an interesting concept. And again, you know, when I think about, you know, it's not that people don't, you know, wealthy people don't buy precious metals. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure there are plenty of them that, you know, are interested in it for, you know, the same reasons as stackers. But my bigger, you know, the way that I'm looking at it is that if you started as a stacker who didn't have much, but then, you know, at a certain point, you know, you had plenty, would that change your views on what it is to stack and why you're doing it? In other words, let's say, for example, you were taking 5% of your income per year and putting it into, you know, silver or gold or numismatics, you know, whatever it is. Would you keep doing that, you know, if your income significantly increased? Now, to a point, you know, as I say it out loud, and again, this is why I love to talk these things through, I would think that, you know, if that was really a habit that you had created, that you would probably initially keep doing it. But I also believe that at a certain point you would start to examine whether it was really worthwhile anymore. What was it doing? What was it serving you? You know what I mean? As it piled up. Because make no mistake, if you're buying 50 grand, you know, let's say you're making $1 million a year. If you're buying 50 grand of, you know, precious metals, which, I mean, I guess if you're buying gold, that's what, 25 ounces? I guess it's not that much. But at a certain point, I mean, that's a pretty heavy haul. I mean, you're looking at Scrooge McDuck at some point. And so maybe, you know, at that point you decide, hey, you know what, I really don't need to stack anymore. And that's the thing that interests me about it, is that, you know, do wealthy people or people with higher incomes go through that transition? Now, make no mistake, in California, $1 million just doesn't get you on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach. It pretty much puts you somewhere in the middle of the road. I mean, you're definitely doing better than, you know, most, I would say, but it's not something where you you know, you're not driving around the Ferrari and you know, picking up your yacht every 2 days. You might have those things, but you know, you're still not you know, in the upper echelon here, which is pretty crazy. I mean, think about that. Like, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you know, if you were bringing down $1 million, you were on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. You know, that was good money. Now that fiat, well, that's exactly, you're putting on a commercial for precious metals. Precious metals have kept their value. Maybe not so much, you know, during that time period. Now, they have had, you know, growth, big spurts, but yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about that many times. Anyway, it's an interesting concept because, again, you know, the stacking journey is one of just constantly, you know, adjusting and learning, and, you know, there's so much out there, there's so much information that, you know, if you do go through that type of, you know, income transition, you know, how do you think it would change your stacking behavior?